we must fight, then I'll make it fast.
Famicom, MSX2, PS, WonderSwan Color, PS1, GBA, 2000 mobile phones, PSP, smartphones, 3DS, and Steam. These are all home to the game that started it all, the original Final Fantasy. We're familiar with the Final Fantasy brand and series today. We're going to see a trend among these ports of Final Fantasy I, where their goal is to bring in more in line with the rest of the Final Fantasy series. Because of this, we have a handful of visual styles to look at, as well as gameplay revamps, and just as important, pieces. Given the non-romanticized circumstances of this development, the first Final Fantasy is full of bugs that heavily affect balance and viability of classes, skills, and party compositions. Thankfully, a lot of research has been done on Final Fantasy I and its various ports. So let's thanks to the Final Fantasy community for this video going into its much detailed consideration.
Why the hell is this guy so good at dodging?
Version of Final Fantasy. We're starting here instead of the NES version because Final Fantasy was MSX2 in Japan before the NES in America, so it predates the changes seen in that version. This version builds off of the Famicom original. To explain some of the changes, we'll have
oh my god! What the fuck?
First off, the overworld's layout was suddenly changed. The sections where monsters are intended to spawn were not adjusted to match, so some encounters are found in different locations than they were intended. In Final Fantasy I, the Black Belt is a unique class with unique formulas for calculating attack and defense. For example, they're programmed to hit twice as many times when unarmed, and their defense is supposed to be equal to their level when unarmored. In the MSX2 version, however, it seems that the Black Belt does not have their unique formulas, so their attack and defense function like any other class now. Though there was also a bug in the NES version.
This can't be happening.
It's been so long. I barely remember when I stole Azumi away from that brothel Gino Bing. All I can recall now is her leg kicking her honor through a window. Why is it that's all I can remember? A leg.
Z, I know you.
You know what, Amira? That there is no way I'll leave the Traveler with enough legs to make it back to Giamata.
They're upset, Z. Don't do this. Not now. This is not the Traveler's doing.
Right. You're right. The Traveler just wanted to have words with Azumi, as I recall.
In my visions I saw this moment, but now I can see no further. If this is the way, Z, then I will follow your lead.
Azumi always said violence was the safest path to the truth. That's how I choose to honor her, Amira. With the swing of my blade and the drops of blood it spills.
Oh.
All this fuss over me?
No, Mara. Please, you're making the situation worse. I wonder what kind of class they are. Girl has a bow and a spear. She might be the same as Vale, since she's doing the thing with the covering her head thing. And she could either be a Kunoichi or a Ronin. I don't believe it's likely that she's a defender, like Umagis. Or a Stormseeker. How bad can they be? I just want to test something real quick. Ooh. Okay, yep. Okay, yep, they're very strong. Well, they are a team of 3. later. Yep. Hmm. Lucky right now, eh?
Harp of Harmony, grant them your blessings.
Oh no, I already have defense up from Final Protection. I'm an idiot. I made Mara do something worthless. Ooh.
Thanks for the attention,
Well, they did it. They killed me. Except Psych.
Thanks. My thanks, dear friends.
One of them has fear. I guess they aren't immune to fear? Yeah.
Thank you. My thanks,
I
dear
bet your ass I'm
friends.
gonna be exploiting that.
This one's mine.
They really are in it for me.
Thank you. This one's mine.
Thank you for your consideration.
You're wasting your time healing, girl. Oh, multi-shot. Maybe she's archaeologist? There's some good items. What happens if you haven't completed the quest relating them yet? To them yet? Guess we're going back. Or not. I wasted my time doing that. Save me from this bloody destiny.
Or instead of checking for armor, for whether they should have their defense equal their level, it actually checked for a weapon instead. That's not an issue for the MSX version, since it doesn't give the Black Belt a unique calculation for their defense anyway, but regardless, the Black Belt's attack and defense function properly in every version after the NES version. Additionally, there was a woman in Cornelia Castle who had dialogue but wasn't visible in the NES version, but she's made visible in the MSX2 version, though in future ports she's been removed entirely. Thanks to being on floppy disk, there was more storage space, but there was significantly longer load times.
Yikes.
There's no batteries in these things, of course, so you'll need blank floppies for saving.
Mother Trinity,
MSX has a
Ancient of
technical
Life,
advantage to
help us
having
bring
common
balance
terms
to the
of
chaos within this
scale.
labyrinth.
But it is subjective whether you prefer the graphics of the MSX version over the Famicom original. And then the music was updated next to the different hardware, and some dungeons had their tracks. So we'll talk about the NES version of Final Fantasy. Nintendo of America's notorious censorship policies from the era affected Final
If
Fantasy
we must
1.
fight,
Most
then I'll
of the
make it
visual
fast.
changes they made have since carried over to every port as well. Crosses were removed, churches are now clinics, the last floor of the game was changed from a hexagram to a triangle, and Medusa enemies were given tongues. Additionally, since spell names can only be 4 characters long,
But they're
many
still topless
were changed
mermaids.
to accommodate. This is how spell names like Locke, Lit, and Bane. There was a handful of character sprite updates, menus were given icons, and the Beholder enemies were renamed to Eye enemies, and their sprites have been changed to differentiate them from Beholders from Dungeons & Dragons. Now, there are 2 Famicom versions, the original release, then a later re-release that included Final Fantasy II as well, and the updated Medusa, Eye, and character sprites were brought into the Famicom release. However, the Beholder enemies were still Beholder. Later on, when the Famicom version came to the Wii U, and 3DS eShop, not only were flashing effects toned down, but the
Brawn wins
sprite was
battles,
also reversed
brains
back to
win
being
wars.
topless, while the Beholder's name was
My heart
updated.
is truly
Now, we
broken.
have to level up.
Someone must
the
have
original
turned
version
thee
of
against
Final
you.
Fantasy straight up has non-functioning
I can't believe you guys still trust me.
stats and items. If you're looking for a more polished version of the original, you're gonna have to look into ROM hacks of it. The MSX2 version, regardless of visuals or its soundtrack, still has a hefty number of bugs and oddities, as well as some serious load times that require patience. So then for those looking for a more accessible experience or more modern visuals and music, you should probably consider one of the other versions we look at. Next is the WonderSwan Color version. If you've played any version of Final Fantasy I past the original version, or if you played other 2D Final Fantasy games, then things are going to start looking familiar. To start, in Final Fantasy I, if you target an enemy who's died before the attack can happen, your attack will be ineffective, rather than automatically targeting another enemy like you might be used to in other games. The WonderSwan Color version gives you an option to automatically redirect your attack, which combined with the other changes results in significantly faster encounters. Previously, a simple encounter with a few goblins could easily take around a minute or more, but now that same encounter could take seconds. This is also thanks to the UI that's been revamped to resemble the menus from the Final Fantasy SNES titles, enabling a lot of quality of life upgrades, like being able to see how new equipment compares to what you have already, optimizing equipment, buying items in bulk, viewing the overworld map, and in battle you can see which status ailments anyone has. Additionally, you can dash in towns or dungeons, delete spells from your limited spell slots, have 8 save slots, a quick save slot that lasts until the console is turned off, equipment is now pooled among the party rather than every
studies
character
have
having
prepared
an
me for this.
individual equipment inventory, or curatives can be used in battles now, such as sobs. And silence no longer prevents the use of items. The trade-off for these changes is that the bosses were given more HP to balance the gameplay. The WonderSwan Color version also addresses many of the notable and well-documented bugs with the original release. A large handful of magic spells, items, and weapons all malfunction as they were intended to. Fleeing also
Harp
works
of
as it was
Harmony,
originally
calm
intended
the
to
restless
as well,
souls.
so future versions will be worked fleeing entirely.
attention,
Some important bugs were left in for now, which makes them seem like they were intentional, such as how scripts work and the peninsula of power. We'll touch on those bugs much later. The WonderSwan Color version has a larger color palette compared to the Famicom. Thanks to the more capable hardware, the game performs faster, sprites were updated to be more consistent with the Super Nintendo Final Fantasy games, buildings now have interiors, the game script was vastly expanded since now the hardware can handle more than one text box per conversation, many cutscenes were incorporated including an opening, and battles have full backgrounds now. And additionally, the eye enemies use their revised sprites as well as their revised names. On top of a different sound to the original soundtrack, more new original music was composed as well, including boss
Better
battle
luck
music.
next time.
The PlayStation 1 version of Final Fantasy builds off of the WonderSwan Color remake. This version is part of a compilation known as Final Fantasy Origins. Final Fantasy 1 and 2 both released individually in Japan prior to this collection, but the collection served as the first time the US got these versions, and the first time Europe got Final Fantasy 1 at all. This is the version you'll find today on the PS3 and Vita, PSN US, and Japanese
If we must
stores.
fight, then
For
I'll
the
make
first
it
time,
fast.
the Japanese text was updated to include kanji. Meanwhile, the English localization has been redone, featuring the expanded text from the WonderSwan Color version, localized for the first time, as well as a more
it makes
faithful
2 attacks
translation.
per turn.
There's also a raised limit of characters and spell names from 4 to 6. Fighter is now named Warrior, and Black Belt is now Monk. An easy mode has been incorporated. This easy mode reduces the prices in shops, enables you to level up faster, and increases the chance of stat growth upon leveling up. Stat growth in the first Final Fantasy would depend on your class. Each class has guaranteed stat increases for each level from 2 to 50, or 2 to 99 now since the level cap was raised in the PS1 version. For non-guaranteed stats, the game uses RNG and calculates whether or not those stats will increase upon leveling up, and this calculation is what's been buffed when playing on easy. Due to the new hardware, the game features an FMV opening, a bestiary, art gallery, item collection, and an updated soundtrack.
This one's mine.
Here, let me help.
Oh, thanks for the attention, darling.
This is also, so far, the highest resolution graphics the game has had yet. We'll notice from now each version builds off another version's sprites, but makes changes to accommodate the different hardware and screen sizes. So the PS1 version is able to show more of the Meanwhile, we'll
Thank you
notice
for your
the color
consideration.
in our next
My
version
thanks,
is
dear
significantly
friends.
brighter since they release on handheld that didn't have backlights. Boy Advance. Final Fantasy was part of a compilation known as Final Fantasy Dawn of Souls, which also included the artwork gallery and item collection for the bestiary and Wonderswan Color opening remain. You can unlock a soundtrack upon beating both games as well, and auto names were added to the start. The European version features multiple language options, while the US version's localization saw further polishing and changes from the PS1 version.
Really?
There were some changes to its localization in Europe, and sometimes the content might be modern text screens. The most well-known inclusion to Dawn of Souls is the inclusion of 4 difficult optional dungeons, featuring bosses from other Final Fantasy games, as well as new equipment and enemies in them. Dawn of Souls removes difficulty options, but mechanically is closer to the PS1 version's easy mode. Automatically retargeting attacks is now a law of the land. The option to enable a dash is replaced with the option to always be dashing now. More conventional series items such as High Potions and Phoenix Downs were added for the first time, as well as permanent stats. Battles now have item drops, curatives, and other items price,
Thank you for your
start with
consideration.
equipment and 500 gold as opposed to 400, and a reference to Erdrick was changed to reference Link. You also don't need to sleep at an inn or use a tent to save anymore. You only have 3 save slots, but you can now save anywhere in the game, including even in dungeons. The spell charge system that Magic used up until now was replaced with a more conventional MP system. The game had several tiers of magic spells, and previously you could only cast spells within a certain tier so many times before you had to sleep to recharge that tier. The original MP system turns the charges into an MP cost. The differences between these two magic systems is full of a lot of nuance, as they have different strategies between early, mid, and end game. Generally, the conventional MP system lets you use magic less conservatively, while the spell charge system involves more careful consideration for your magic use for most of the game, especially when spell charges have a limit of 9 casts per tier, while MP can be as high as 999. Balance-wise, Dawn of Souls made a massive number of changes, such as tweaking the class's stat growth and changing how defense was covered. Arguably, these benefited the most from the stat growth, as it generally lagged behind Warrior and Monk. Defense is now calculated for each armor slot independently, which enables the Monk to still receive some benefits from not equipping armor in some slots, while taking advantage of armor in other slots. Additionally, they address more long-standing bugs regarding stats. For example, monks who upgrade into masters had greater magic defense
We have
stat
been
growth
blessed this
than
day.
masters do. The result was that the upgraded class was more vulnerable to magic than intended as they leveled up, and the lower level you were when you upgraded classes, the more get your magic defense stat would be later. This is a bug. The class upgrades aren't supposed to have trade-offs like that, but it's been fixed finally. Meanwhile, up until this point, the intelligence stat was bugged and had no effect on how potent magic spells were, regardless of your class or even your level. This was finally fixed in Dawn of Souls, so Red Mage ends up nerfed, since the intelligence stat
If we
was the
must
most
fight,
important
then I'll
thing
make it
that was
fast.
supposed to keep it from doing as much damage or healing as the White Mage or Black Mage. To compensate for the changes that are in the player's favor, enemies now have even more HP across the board. While lower resolution of the PlayStation version, the GBA version still uses the same set of sprites and still makes some advances over the WonderSwan Colors visuals, as well as adopts a new version of the soundtrack.
Powers of the heavens, my thanks, dear friends.
With all these changes in Dawn of Souls, Final Fantasy I is now more in line with the later Final Fantasy titles than ever. If you were looking for something more faithful to the original game's gameplay, utilizing these visuals, you'd be looking at the PSX version. But if you're down for a less tedious magic system and more familiarity with Final Fantasy titles,
Why not?
From these versions.
Yeah, the fact we get the ones I like most to
But
wear.
for now, let's rewind that a bit for the Namco mobile version of Final Fantasy. This is a hybrid between the WonderSwan Color version and the original version. None of the PS1 or GBA features are present here. The script for this version has once again been translated. Meanwhile, the Secret 15 puzzle minigame was removed, but the inventory limit has been raised, some enemy groups and locations have been moved around, Knights and ninjas with their different classes of thieves can now have up to 9 spell charges by
This one's mine.
Chaos is able and has no boss music
Yeah,
outside
those ones are lame.
music doesn't use
You know, we could just have absurd damage output.
Let's put it down. Make its suffering swift. My turn.
There are multiple versions of this specific port depending on the phones you use. Larger, more powerful phones could play the game with touchscreen controls and possibly sound effects. Not at the same time as music though, and for some reason this version doesn't seem to have cursor memory options. The most basic version, meanwhile, had no sound effects and was designed around very small screens. While the sprites themselves remain updated, layouts and details are simplified similar to that of the original Famicom version, giving us a really interesting version that had to make a lot of compromises as opposed to building off of more powerful hardware. Anyway, next up is the PSP version, which builds off of the GBA version, but uses the PS1 version's FMVs, soundtrack, and its art gallery. This is the version you'll find on the European as well as Japanese Vita PSN stores, but not on the USN PSN store, despite releasing in the US. The volume that games building Final Fantasy games now have their own respective games' music. The Fed command was also added to battles and skip cutscenes. This version has a unique equipment bug that enables the player to do things like equip gear that they're not supposed to, or to go even further.
My thanks, dear friends.
Another new bonus dungeon was added to this version as well, known as the Labyrinth of Time, featuring a further challenge and new super boss. Visuals saw further upgrades. This is the most visuals have been updated since the WonderSwan Color version. 3D
My
is
thanks,
subtle
dear
in the
friends.
overworld, visual effects were updated, and sky effects have been added to towns and dungeons. So, for example, you can see
Thank
shadows
you for your
cast by
consideration.
clouds. And then we have the iOS, Android, and Windows Phone versions, which build further off of the PSP version. However, the Android version does not include the GBA or PSP bonus dungeons, but the iOS and Windows versions do. The window color options, oddly, and the art gallery were removed. Fortunately, this version is incompatible with most modern smartphones, so it's not a surprise that this version has been delisted from storefronts when the Pixel remasters came out. Even if it does run for you, this version's game speed is tied to its frame rate and needs to run at 30 FPS to run correctly. As always though, with mobile games, your mileage may vary. On Windows phones, the game could retain your phone's status bar at the top and supported achievements. While the game's delisted now from the iOS and Android stores, it's still available on Windows.
Oh, I actually remember. I've forgotten about that version of the game, but I remember that's the one I played the most.
Some of your stat needs random, but your HP and MP are supposed to increase by as well. However, in this version, they can only increase by either the maximum level value or minimum value, depending on your budget. Moreover, the minimum value will be picked 15 times more often than the max value. So essentially, leveling in this version is horrendously bugged. The UI was entirely redesigned to be a touch-friendly interface. This is necessary since the game doesn't support controllers. Otherwise, we can tell this version resembles the PSP version visually. Here's a modern version that many in the US may not be familiar with. This is the 3DS version of Final Fantasy I. This version was included free with first-print copies of Final Fantasy Explorers in Japan, and it was later released on the eShop. This is a full-blown port of the PSP version, built around utilizing both screens. On the bottom screen you have your party info and a map and legend. Towns are now 3D models as well, which really helps sell the diorama or shadow box-like effect when you play in 3D. Aside from the equipment bug, the PSP version has the most content and is significantly more polished. While the smartphone and 3DS versions build off of it, they aren't as visually sharp, so the value of the 3DS version relies on utilizing that 3D. And of course, there's the issue of accessibility. There does seem to be a recent interest in the 3DS homebrew scene to create a fan translation of this 3DS version, but otherwise it's only in Japanese right now. Meanwhile, like we said, you can't digitally purchase the PSP version legitimately right now in the US or the smartphone version anywhere besides on Windows phones, and which even then it had mixed. Versions later, we have arrived at the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster. This version takes an interesting step in trying to maintain elements that made Final Fantasy I stand out from the rest of the Final Fantasy series. We'll see though that this principle is applied selectively and there are still more new features to this version. While the bestiary, music player, item collection tracking, and gallery return, the GBA and PSP bonus dungeons are no longer present. The Pixel Remaster goes back to the spell chart system of the original game, however, it lost the contained GBA version stats, so there's still several changes as we input. For example, the way enemies choose which actions to do in battle was totally changed. The US GBA localization is used with some additional polish, WonderSwan color cutscenes remain, prices in shops are reduced as they were in the GBA version, additional items, motions, and meeting sounds, you also can't save anywhere you want to anymore, but you can save in the open world, so you aren't required to use
brains win
or go to
wars.
the end like you were in the original versions. You can also quick save wherever you want, and you can load that quick save even if you've closed the game or the device you're using. You can walk diagonally now, even when you're going through tight areas, change who in your party walks in the open world instantly, fixed encounters are represented by monsters in a box or hooded dudes, enemies can now fail to flee, some locations had subtle quality of life changes like the pathways in the marsh cave, maps and legends were incorporated to help you find your way and find where you are, and petrified party members now gain XP. And for the first time, the game now has an auto battle system that speeds
I don't understand that. I don't think
repeats the last act
Petrify is technically just an alternative death state.
Start. There's no option for always dashing anymore or for message speed, which is now always instant. The Peninsula of Power is a known spot where the encounter map of an area you're not supposed to be able to access early in the game includes a peninsula that's sticking out, thanks to the square shape of the encounter maps. This spot has been left in every version of Final Fantasy I except the Pixel Remaster. The critical hit bug, however, remains. This is a bug where your weapon's index number determines its critical hit chance rather than the number actually supposed to determine it. As a result, Crits are less common than intended at the beginning of the game, and significantly higher towards the end of the game. The puzzle minigame on the ship is still present, but it doesn't have
Thank
any
you for
reward.
My thanks, dear
Previously,
friend.
you could use this
My
game to
thanks,
farm
dear
fuel.
friend.
And now we'll discuss visuals. The sprite work for the main party has been entirely redone. The new sprites were recreated by the game's original designer, as well as the designer behind much of what defines the look of the 2D Final Fantasy games, Kazuko Shibuya. This shows as well as the sprites are based on their original appearances, and not the more Super Nintendo era-like sprites of the Wonder Swan Color
My
version. and
studies have
onwards.
prepared me
Thus,
for
the
this.
idea here is to help the game retain its own look among the Final Fantasy games. By contrast, though, NPC sprites resemble their Wonder Swan Color designs more so than their original NES designs. New animations and effects are present as well for items and spells. Additionally, the Pixel Remaster offers a classic filter, which simulates the effect of a CRT. It does its job in that when you study dense pixel areas, they do blend together and create the illusion of depth, though the filter may come off as too strong at first, especially on larger displays. I personally love a good CRT filter, though this one does give me a bit of a headache, so I haven't been using it. Pixel Remaster supports a ton of aspect ratio and resolutions, though I don't think this is technically considered arbitrary resolution support since you can't freely resize the window. And this font, though,
Let's
we
put it
should talk
down.
about.
Make it suffering
But we'll
swift.
have issues with this, but you can judge for yourself by looking at this footage. This font is just so narrow and small that it's frustrating for some people to read constantly. From a designer's perspective, they can only really take care of the technical or programming reason why the font is like this, similar to the thin font of the PAL version of Dawn of Souls,
Thank you.
or maybe because of the various aspect ratios the game has to support. For now, those on PC, you can either use a mod or swap the Japanese font's English characters in. But these solutions shouldn't be necessary and they aren't perfect either, since this doesn't work for mobile users and won't work for the eventual console releases. But anyway, the soundtrack has been entirely reorchestrated, setting it apart from the other versions of the soundtrack. Additionally, sound effects were lifted from Final Fantasy IV's 3D remake, as well as Final Fantasy V, Final Fantasy VI's mobile ports. For those who are playing this version on mobile, there is still no controller support. However, an additional option was added where you can tap the tile you want to move to, and it'll automatically move to it. While the UI for both versions is larger and has a bit of a more modern design to it, the mobile version's UI does
How the heck am I
actually
supposed to solve
differentiate
this?
from the PC versions. As such, the PC version is designed more traditionally with controllers in mind, while the mobile version is definitely more suited for touch controls. Additionally, the bestiary has this interactive map view, and the mobile version's
that wall
bestiary
looks a
supports
little
augmented
odd.
reality battles. Unfortunately, though, there's zero tracking, which is what I thought augmented reality was, so basically it just overlays the battle over your camera. Lastly, I'd like to mention the performance
It's a
of
secret
the PC
wall,
version, as the Pixel remasters have been giving some people issues in regard to screen tearing, since there is no in-game VSync options. The patch as of August 27,
How am I supposed to-
2021 addressed this a bit, but the notes specify that the issues will continue.
How am I
be
supposed to
worked
get there?
If I could break character to complain about PC games again for a moment, I just set my NVIDIA graphics settings to enable VSync by default universally, because I'm getting sick of how many games recently are releasing on PC with screen tearing and no VSync options. Reception to the Pixel remasters has been pretty critical, since there are 9 other versions of this game you
wall
could
looks a
possibly
little
play,
odd.
with varying levels of accessibility in different ways and different flavors of visuals and gameplay.
think there's
If you want to
something wrong
download the
about
version
that
on
wall.
Steam and play,
Oh.
then you're done. Otherwise, there's things to consider like the visuals or gameplay experience that interest you. For example, if we want to play with a more conventional MP system, we may be attracted to the GBA or PSP version's visual styles, or their more polished gameplay experiences and bonus content. But otherwise, if these selective elements of the original attract you to the Pixel Remaster, then it's a great version as well. There's no wrong version of the first Final Fantasy,
There you
so
go.
long as you
That's
enjoy the
annoying.
experience.
I don't know why the
Thanks for
invisible
watching,
wall
guys.
didn't
If you're
reveal
interested,
itself
I'd be back
sooner.
on Twitter and have a Patreon if you'd like to help support these ongoing videos. Also, special thank you to Avin Chaos for helping to peer review the script before the video went up.
The great grandson of Dundine Dervish, dozens of times over, wishes to command me. Go back to this foster, go back to this king, and tell them even during the War of Ascension, I took orders from no one. I cannot leave this place. I am cursed to wander these halls until the spawn of Shilorath, Lex Zero, is defeated. Only then will the seal that opens the way deeper to the dark expanse open for you. Only then will my quest be complete. Yet I must warn you, long ago you told me a story of how you came to this labyrinth. You had a life once, a family that loved you, a man that loved you. You told me you once dreamed of this place, that you packed your bags and abandoned all you held dear to travel here and seek the answers to your strange dreams.
I was straight?
After you disappeared in the dark expanse, I stayed there a while. Other adventurers and travelers passed through. One of them knew you.
I just realized the volume could be louder. I'm sorry. There, Warwick sounds louder now.
In fact, it was your beloved Royce. He came to the labyrinth looking for you and got lost down here like the rest of us.
What?
I know that you don't remember him, but maybe you shouldn't continue any further. You know that Indra is the master of this labyrinth.
What? No?
I will help you defeat Shilorath. Prepare yourself for a fierce battle and meet me at the Cloister of Fire where he makes his home.
Come on, this better be a secret. Well, we're almost done here anyway.
It doesn't feel the same down here anymore, with a whole adventuring party killed in one day.
Right, Xander. But if you feel that way, how do you think the Traveler and his party feels?
That's her for you. Don't you misgender me?
I'm sorry. That confrontation must have been awful.
Awful? More like one of the greatest tragedies any adventurer has faced in here.
We still trust you, Traveler, so Myra cleared your name.
She did? How?
Someone tried to trap us the other day. We know that others have been sabotaged recently too, even Scuzz and Leroy.
I don't feel bad for them.
I know we goof around down here with each other, but I wanted you to know we'd never raise a sword or spell against you.
Even if they were founded, Z and Azumi maintained an anger and prejudice that led to their deaths. Whoever tried to frame you knew that.
We have to own up to our mistakes down here. Like when I tossed some robot head into the lava and it almost blew Xander through the ceiling.
Bruh.
Z, Amira, and Azumi died because they didn't see their weaknesses clearly.
That's why I make fun of Xander all the time. I let him know exactly what's wrong with him.
Stay strong, Traveler. We'll be keeping an eye out for you.
Perhaps it's about time I enhanced my other skills to A rank as well. Should be easy enough. Rather than grinding to get to A rank, because I'm not planning on doing that anymore. Maybe I'll grind to max out all of my exploration skills for convenience.
All adventurers who have
Huh. Tangerine. And
Those
it's
two
with
bounty
Leroy.
hunters were in here, sitting in the corner, acting creepy, like they always do.
What?
Skulls killed a rat under the table with his dagger. He ate the thing before he remembered he wasn't out in some forsaken wilderness. They're looking for help, though. You can run into them at the Red Horse if you're searching for trouble.
Well, well. If it isn't the new heroes of Gamada. What's that? You want to go hang out with us in the labyrinth?
Not really, but apparently you guys will give me a ring.
We're going somewhere dirty. I don't want to hear you crying about getting that fancy armor of yours soiled with excrement.
I'm wearing no armor.
Get your supplies and meet us on the 12th station.
And besides, isn't the point of armor to get it sullied?
It's been a while since we've needed proper shield fodder and bait. This is gonna be fun. So we're hunting a yokai.
It'll
There's
be
been
the
talk
other
of a
way around,
tremendous
honestly.
ape bashing at adventurer skulls. It eats their skulls. Craps them out, too.
Yep, that's what we're looking for. Monkey dung and head bones. Get to looking and let us know when you find the droppings.
Okay. Oh, what are these? And by the Sunbell of Constitution now. It's expensive. I think we're nearing the end of the game. The next dungeon might be the last, or at the very least the second to last. Barring any post-game content the game might have planned for us. Should unlock the portal to the place. Yep. You mean Atlas Wilds? Yep, Jean the Mirror boss lol. Shame I couldn't fight all three of them. Apparently the other one already died. My god, it scales so weakly. Guess I may as well get Heart Strike back. I don't really know what else to get for her. I could just max out the shurikens, I suppose. Kind of want to get Garden Barrier. At least.
Hey, Traveler. I heard the Labyrinth is tired of killing us, so it's letting you take over for a while.
You took out the Easterners. I don't blame you. The Labyrinth has played tricks like this before. No one on Giamata cares when it's just common adventurers being turned on one another.
But the Jade Prince and the Traveler? Everyone is talking about it.
Zaya and Izumi were fools. People like that don't last long down here.
On the contrary, they made it quite far, you know.
Amira was nice. I could tell because she flinched every time I tried to talk to her. Only broken people like talking to us.
That's right, Traveler. But you're not broken, are you?
Not yet, anyway.
I am broke.
Don't lose any sleep over it. Unless you're trying to dig up some treasure those three hid down there.
Unlikely. Oh! Oh no! Oh no!
So imagine this. Cloud Strife and the crew were on a casual midnight stroll throughout Midgar after a successful avalanche operation, when suddenly he is struck with an intense hunger. The Genova cells in his body begin to show him visions of retail worker Sephiroth in a way to manipulate his fated path down the road of the Golden Arches. Eventually deciding to get his crew together so that they can go get a couple of stomach-filling and delicious treats at an affordable price. Thus, they ascend the stairs to the upper deck of Midgar. And they keep ascending. And they're still going. But they finally reach Sector 7's own famous McDonald's, which is a cultural landmark that's been part of Midgar's history since the beginning, and I'm sure nothing bad happens. Though only after ordering does Cloud realize that the menus up here aren't written in traditional Gil. Instead, there's some foreign currency that he hasn't heard of before, and now he's to think how much Gil does it cost to buy a Big Mac. So, before we can fully address the question itself, we need to understand quite a few details about Final Fantasy VII's world as a whole. Firstly, we need to respect
This one's mine.
it as well that we can do so in real life as well.
Thanks.
And finally, we need to know what year Final Fantasy
Wow, we won!
place it. This way, we can not only determine a more accurate exchange rate of Gil for money, but also determine how much a Big Mac would cost in general. As well, I should address that I will be tackling both Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake separately for key reasons that you'll see later. As well, I will be converting directly into USD, mainly because it's just the currency I'm most familiar with. As well, much like I've done before, I won't be using any products that are clearly inspired by ones in Final Fantasy unless they have the exact same effects. An example of something like this would be the potion or elixir energy drinks. Because if I were to jump off a bridge and break both my legs, neither of these drinks would help get me up again. I'd just be more energetic about my pain. Whereas if I did the same thing in a Final Fantasy setting, nothing would happen. There's no fall damage in Final Fantasy. I've seen it with my own eyes. You can prove it. As well, in Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, we do see the exact potion energy
Remember that I
drink
meant to get some upgrades.
in real life, which might seem to you like a perfect solution for our second problem, but this said energy drink not only shows healing properties like the magic drinks of other settings, but also is not available for purchase, so we won't be able to determine anything from it. Which, speaking of purchasing, let's begin to discuss the history of Gil itself. Now, Gil is a currency that has been around since the original Final Fantasy, at least according to the Japanese versions of the games, which has its name seemingly inspired by the Japanese pronunciation of Gilder, which is an English word for the Dutch and German currency of gulden or florin, which was sometimes nicknamed as the Golden Penny, and was originally given its name by the Holy Roman Empire in the 13th century, and became such a predominant currency that any form of coin trade at the time could be referred to as a golden or gil. This is why Final Fantasy likely used this term, as a way to give its currency a unique appearance without just defaulting to the general GP or gold that we see in other RPGs. Now, while some games have tried to justify the term Gil in-universe, such as Final Fantasy IV by having it be named after the currency's founder of Gilbert in the Kingdom of Dancing, or describing where they come from, like in Final Fantasy XI, where they explain how the minting process for Gil works to avoid counterfeit. Sadly, in Final Fantasy VII, there is no real information on the minting or origins of Gil in its universe, with the only real example of coins appearing.
I just realized I maybe could have made a different save, so I could see what would happen if I picked a different option.
The classic Gil toss move usually attributed to the Samurai Jump, which in itself is a reference to a classic Japanese character of Zenigata Haiji, which is a police officer from the Edo period who captures his targets by throwing money at them. And thus, the coins shown in the attack are likely just a callback reference to that, as the Gil takes the shape of large silver coins with holes in the middle of them, very similar to that of classic Japanese currencies such as Mon or some yen coins, similar to the type that Zenigata would have thrown himself, which of course leads to some questions. Are these coins supposed to be a representation of Gil, or are they just a reference to Zenigata? And according to Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core, the latter is actually true, as the coin toss seems to take on a completely different appearance, being a solid gold coin when Zack hurls them in a shotgun-like pattern. This remains true for the Crisis Core remake, and seemingly Final Fantasy VII's remake as well. But that's assuming that Chocobo Sam's trick coin is a trick guild coin, or not. Which, speaking of coins in Final Fantasy VII Remake, Rufus Shinra also introduces an interesting problem, as during his boss fight, he produces a set of coins which he uses in said fight. These, as well, could be guild coins, but they're silver in color and marking symbols that they are a completely different form of currency. Let's say Shinra Bucks for now. This currency, if it exists,
What's
is likely
that?
used exclusively by those in the upper city of Midgar. The
I
reason
think
believe
there's something
this
wrong
is
about
because
that
if
wall.
we actually look at upper city and lower city prices, there is a staggering difference in how everything is laid out. With the upper city prices actually resembling a lot of USD prices, or are just so drastically smaller denominations, I doubt that there's a better way to measure it using the same currency. For example, in Tifa's Bar, 7th Heaven, you can get a cup of coffee for 250 gil, while coffee from a bar in the upper section of Midgar costs roughly
Better keep my guard up.
1.3 or likely 1.30 of the upper city's currency. The reason I say 1.30 is that the same sign also lists an apple pie for $4.99. These signs are clearly not marked in gil, as it does not match up with any of the traditional prices that we see in the game, or even inside the Shinra-owned Potion brand vending machines, which also take gil. And because of the strange discrepancy with gil's prices, I've opted to cut the prices from the upper city out of the discussion, but I am curious if these
This one's mine.
have any correlation with our final findings. Now, next we must determine the year in which Final Fantasy VII takes place. Logistics and any supplementary materials involved in Final Fantasy VII is actually rather easy to figure out. And given that McDonald's has officially recognized Cloud before in the past, let's use him as a reference point, as according to Final Fantasy VII's Pennsylvania Almanac, as
Guess
well
I
as the
won.
Final Fantasy VII
Better luck
Remake's
next
Ultimate,
time.
Cloud Strife was born August 11th of 1986, which not only confirms the 12-month cycle that we have in our world, but also counters in the game suggests that there is a similar 7-day structure to the week. Thus, I feel that there is enough correlation between how time is measured there and how time is measured here to work under the assumption that Cloud was born in a similar but parallel 1986 to that of our own. Now, Cloud was also confirmed to be 21 during the original events of Final Fantasy VII, which also occurred during the month of December to January, at least according to information from multiple anniversary companion lists. With this in mind, the original Final Fantasy VII's events would take place between late 2007 to early 2008 in our, and thus the same would be true for the Final Fantasy VII remake. With this information, it makes it a lot simpler to grab accurate data.
Something's
of the
off
cost
about
of
that
items
wall.
That will both be in our world and theirs, as well as the
I
price
believe
of
this
Big
wall
Mac
is
that we
false.
working with. Though the comparison items will be different between Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VII Remake. So, I'll start first with the original Final Fantasy VII. Now, because of the game's age, it doesn't have the same visuals that the remake does, and it's really hard to find pricing of anything in the overworld outside of the items that you purchase within the game itself. Which, the first thing you might think to use then, would be that of tents.
If we must fight,
which
then I'll make
would
it
work if
fast.
not for one clear issue about tents in Final Fantasy. The characters clearly eat them afterwards. Unless you justify the tents just being destroyed after one use. I doubt that the eco-terrorists would be polluting tents all over the world, but with tents out of the question, they're
This one's mine.
and a lot of the items are very magical or weapons.
Thank you for your consideration.
Ultimate, my turn.
Tifa will love it carry us out of this problem with her glove-adorned arms. These gloves, for instance, being her work gloves, specifically. It's within Final Fantasy VII, series of rogue weapons, her character, which resemble a number of
Thank you
different
for your consideration.
like, for example, Parent
Guess that wasn't too bad.
Why I'm not using that as a reference point, you actually can't buy the umbrella, like other joke weapons in the game. It is given to you as a reward within the Golden Saucer. It again proven to me that Tifa is the spirit girl. Though, back to her gloves. These work gloves are based off the standard cotton gloves often seen in use during hard labor jobs, like construction or for gardening. And this weapon can be purchased after the player unlocks the highlight by speaking with the Lomer Junon Materia Shopkeep, and they cost around 2,200 gil, which means we just need to find the cost of a similar pair of cotton gloves in our world, 2007 to 2008. And after a lot of searching, me and my friends were able to find an archive of Sears' Black Friday catalog from 2008, which lists the price of a similar pair of cotton gloves for roughly $10 per pair. If we weren't using the Black Friday price there, that would be $2, but that would not work for this specific measurement. We could say that $10 is roughly equivalent to 2,200 yen, which is actually pretty simple in the conversion rate. That means that $1 USD is equivalent to 220 yen. Now, unfortunately, the Final Fantasy VII Remake does not have
This one's mine.
but also
Let me help.
within the bar is some hardwood prices for
My thanks, dear friends.
Now, you might argue,
Wow, we won.
hamburger as an example. Well, knowing my luck, this is actually a hamburger steak, as it's right next to the steak product, and thus would not be equivalent to stomach-filling McDonald's Big Mac. They also wanted to find something that was available both in the upper and lower sections of Midgar that we could buy in our world right now at a set price. And what I think the conclusion was something you actually already heard me talk about, this being coffee, as coffee is a pretty common purchase across the world, and you can get yours from 7th Heaven for 250 yen. And luckily, due to the popularity of coffee in our world, there's a lot of information tracking coffee prices throughout the years. I even found one that was divided into the 4 fiscal quarters throughout 45 years of time. So, looking at 2007's 4th quarter coffee prices, we can see that the Cup of Joe ran the average person around $1.36, which means, after plugging these numbers in, we can get about $1 is equivalent to roughly 184 gil in Final Fantasy VII Remake. And with that said, I think it's extremely fascinating that this price matches up very well with the upper city prices that we see in-game. As according to these signs, the 1.30 Shinra bucks for a coffee is very similar to that of the $1.36 that we pay in the real world around this time. You might even be able to argue that there's a 1-to-1 conversion rate between USD and Shinra dollars, but that doesn't matter so much right now, because now that we have these two conversion rates, we can finally successfully
The mother's
purchase our
strength
Macs.
flows through
So,
me.
according to the Big Mac Index, we see that the Big Mac on average costs roughly $3.41 in 2007, or $3.57 in 2008. I'm going to be converting using the higher price just to make sure that they could have covered the cost of the Big Mac no matter what.
This one's mine.
This resulted in a 785 gil from the original Final Fantasy VII and 657 gil from the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is a surprising
All to myself!
other consumable items within the world of Final Fantasy, such as a potion or even a item.
Brawn wins
The
battles,
McDonald's
brains
also
win
sometimes referred
wars.
to as the Golden Arches, right? So what if the party didn't get their Big Macs at Midgar? What if instead they went to the Golden Saucer? Well, that would raise a problem in and of itself, as due to the Golden Saucer's function, you don't use gil there. Instead, you purchase things with a series of points, one of these points being GP, which can't be bought directly and must be earned. Well, there is one merchant who will exchange it, as if you enter and exit the Golden Saucer a couple times, a man will spawn, and he will offer you 1 GP per 100 gil you give him. And if we plug this conversion rate together with our other two, we can see...
Good. We're on the trail.
Hey, remember the last monkey trouble we got into?
What? At the temple?
Yeah, that one primate stole your cape. Went swinging on the vines looking like a hero.
That's right, but I took something of theirs too. Enough story time. Let's get moving.
that in the original Final Fantasy VII, 1 USD is equivalent to roughly 2.2 GP, while in Final Fantasy VII,
You, traveler, make noise. You'll draw the yokai out. We'll step in when you're about to get clubbed to death.
Wow, Leroy never lets me get in the first blow on her prey. You should be honored.
Aw, all this fuss over me.
Just you.
Harp of Harmony, grant them your blessings.
Thank you for your consideration.
This one's mine.
Educated strike is all
This one's
it
mine.
takes.
Thank you for your consideration. Thank you. Violence is never the answer. Only the...
Not bad so far. That ape head is going to look great on the wall of our lodge.
Yikes! Hey, why don't you guys keep at it a little longer?
This thing is going to be tough to drag out of here. Hope this isn't wearing you out.
My studies have prepared me for this.
Thank you.
Powers of the heavens. This one's mine.
Demise painless.
conversation, darling. Guess I won. Better luck next time.
The Gold Saucer's prices for Big Macs, assuming that the 2008 costs remain the same, would roughly be 7.8 GP for one Big Mac in Final Fantasy VII Original and 6.6 GP in the remake. This is also assuming that the remake has a 1-to-100 conversion rate for Guild to GP, but that's just speculation for me at this point. But knowing how Dio runs the Golden Saucer, you can probably round these up to 8 and 7 respectively. But with that all said and done, I hope you enjoyed this video. Guild was one of those currencies that I wasn't fully sure how I would tackle, as it's been interpreted in a lot of different ways, and I might go back and try to convert it from every Final Fantasy game in the franchise, but Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is on the horizon, and I've been really getting back into 7 itself, so I thought this was a fun way to relook at the worlds of both games to get me prepared for whatever Rebirth throws our way. As well, this video is part of a series called Fantasy Currency that I like to do, and if you have any recommendations for any other currencies that you want to see me cover, feel free to leave a suggestion below in the comments. And thank you for watching. If you want to support more videos like this in the future, I have a Patreon at patreon.com/MannyTheBadGuy. Every little bit helps keep the show flowing as smoothly as it does. And if you wish to avoid the ghost of retail worker Sephiroth, well, you can do so by buying a copy of Shimonetta and Morrowind with the Constant of Dirty Jokes doesn't exist at MyShimonetta.com.
Bro, this floor sucks.
The mother's strength flows through me. This one's mine.
Thank you. Wow, we won!
London. Random teleports is not very good game design. It actively discourages exploration. Another great thing about Etrian Odyssey, I guess, with its map drawing thing and all the gimmicks associated with it, they encourage you to pay attention and actually try to draw out the map rather than just trying to blindly go through it. Hey, there's the Tengu ring. Cursor assist. That's a weird description for it.
Ah, all this fuss over me?
The artillery in the front.
This one's mine. We have been blessed this day. My thanks, dear friends.
Lady Jenica keeps telling me that we should trust Lady Jacinda. I'm not sure I'm ready to trust a woman who once killed in the name of Indra.
And you'd be right.
This doesn't take a genius to notice.
Because that's fucking stupid.
If we must fight, then I'll make it fast. Let's put it down. Make its suffering swift.
This one's mine.
Brawn wins battles, brains win wars.
Better keep my guard up.
Harp of Harmony, grant them your blessings.
This one's mine.
Thank you. desire to use this power for the well-being of others.
What's that? What's that?
The block puzzles continue to get more complex as you move deeper into the labyrinth.
Gee, thanks for the useful information.
Better keep my guard up.
That'll do for now.